Welcome back to the channel. My name is Tronage, and today we're going to be talking about the ExploreOne HD action camera with Wi-Fi. Bumped into this at Costco and I figured, why not check it out? All right, so you want to check it out with me? Stick around. Inspiration sometimes comes when you least expect it. Now, I've walked through Costco many a time over the years, and every now and then they'll have some sort of drone type product, and usually I'll pick it up and I'll take a look at it and I'll think, is this relevant for the channel? Is this something that you guys, the viewers, would be interested in? And usually it ends up looking like some sort of junk or toy or just a lot of marketing on a box, but the product itself is probably not really anything great. However, this last time I was at Costco, I bumped into this, HD camera. Now, obviously, it's a clear, copy of a GoPro, no questions asked. However, I figured compared to what I'm currently using, and what I'm currently using is I'm using an old GoPro Hero, like the one that does not come out of the waterproof case. It's permanently in the waterproof case. As well, I have an older session, like one of the first sessions, and that's all I have when I do anything on a quad. Those are the things that I strap onto quads to fly with. As well, if I need like some cameras out in the field, those are what I'll be using. I figured this would be, if it works out, I mean, the specs on the back look pretty decent. I mean, slow down. Let's not expect this to compare to like a GoPro Hero like 7 or anything. It's not, I don't have high hopes for it because the price was hard to beat. I mean, it was $28.99, and when I saw that, it's sort of one of those, well, the price is hard to beat, but you usually get what you pay for. So I figured I was willing to check it out for myself as well as for you guys, because this could be a great option if you don't have an action camera and you want to pick one up and it's so affordable. Or let's say you have one, but you'd like another one for maybe a beater quad and you don't want to, put a real expensive camera on your quad. This is so cheap that you could put this on a beater quad and still get that footage without having that fear that you're going to smash up a very expensive camera. So what we're going to do, I'm going to bring you all in close. We're going to look over the specs on the packaging here. We'll open it up. We'll do a little bit of an unboxing. I'll give you my initial thoughts as far as just, fit and finish. And then I'm going to do a little side-by-side comparison, comparing it to the other cameras that I currently have and see, does it stack up with the rest? Is it worse? Is it maybe even better? Is this an upgrade to what I'm currently using? And then we'll go over that together. But before we do any of that, slam that subscribe button. While you're at it, hit that bell icon. It is 100% free, doesn't cost you anything, but it does help support this channel. Keeps you in the know when I post videos such as this one. All right, let's get started. Come on in close. Let's unbox this. So first, let's just talk about the packaging and what's on it and what caught my eye. I mean, obviously it's flashy packaging. That's what marketing does. It's got big Wi-Fi action and HD, and you're thinking, oh wow, tripods included, create a blog, you can put it on the tripod, record and share the action, view the action live. It's like, okay, yeah, we get it. Okay. What I liked about it was it came with a SD card, so you don't have to go out and buy one. You got an 8 gig one right there. Now it's 8 gig. It's on the smaller side, but should be sufficient for what we're going to be doing. We flip this guy over, and let's talk about what I saw as far as specs go when I was making this purchase. Let's go over these specs here because they're nice and laid out well. It does have a preview screen, they're calling it. My GoPro does not have one. It's just, mine just has battery. There's nothing here. So the fact that it has a preview screen is great because if I decide not to put this on a quad per se, but maybe using this to shoot some on-the-go stuff when I'm out in the field, at least I know where I'm aiming it. I'm not just taking a best guess scenario. So I was happy that it has a preview screen. It does come with like a bunch of accessories. It's got, you know, the camera, the cable, the mounts, the tripod, the waterproof case, more mounts. It's got like pretty much everything you would need for that price. Is pretty cool. Back over here to the specs. So we have, you know, it does a whole bunch of different camera shots up to 12 megapixel all the way down to like VGA style. So you can probably pick those in some sort of menu. For video, which is where I would be primarily using it, the top of the line here is 1080p at 30 frames per second. Now, clearly that's not 4K. Clearly that's not 60 or 120 frames per second. So that's sort of like the top tier that this is capable of is sort of like the minimum requirements that I would say I'd want in an action cam is 1080p at 30 frames a second. So I'm probably never going to use these lower settings, but the fact that it did do 1080p at 30 frames a second, I feel is at least acceptable for what I would be using. It does have the Wi-Fi connectivity, which, you know, is kind of cool, but I probably won't ever use it just because since it has a screen, I don't really need to look at it on my phone because I can see it on the screen. It does have the waterproof case. What's great is it says waterproof case resistant up to 30 meters. Like, you know, the whole debate between waterproof and water resistant. So how's a waterproof case resistant? But whatever. Up to 100 feet, so that'll be cool if I decide to take this on my scuba diving adventures. It says it has a 120-degree wide-angle lens, which is, you know, it's acceptable. That, you know, we'll see how that looks compared to the other cameras. It does include the 8GB SD card, and its recording time is 45 minutes at 1080p with the Wi-Fi, it looks like, turned on. So obviously, it burns the battery life running the Wi-Fi radio. And since I'm probably not going to use it, if there's a way to turn that off, I'm probably going to turn that off. So hopefully we'll get a little bit better battery time. So to put it simply, its best was sort of like my lowest, which is, you know, kind of like, okay, let's check it out. And that's why I was willing to give it a shot, and we'll try it out together and we'll see how things go. So why don't we dig in now and see what this looks like in the hand. So I always hate the way Costco packages these things onto like a card because it never makes it easy to open. Everything's like compartmentalized and you got to figure out which way you want to go. So I'm going to save the camera for last. So I guess let's do the SD card first since that's a little boring. Probably should have switched out this blade for a sharper one. In fact, I'm going to go, yeah, let me go get a new blade. Got me a fresh blade now. This should cut way easier. All right, next let's go into this little accessory compartment here and pull that stuff out. Try not to stab myself here. There we go. Okay, a whole bunch of plastic goodies in there. Now the tripod section. Okay, we got a little instruction book too. And now the pièce de la résistance, the camera itself. Okay, I think I got everything out of there. Looks good. Throw that to the side. All right, so let's look at what we got here. All right, so we got the SD card. We got a couple mount options here, which is kind of cool. We have like a clip mount action. What's this for? Well, that's for the, okay, that would be for this thing to wrap around for like mounting it on a pole. Okay, so we got this unit here that goes like this. And that's what these screws are for, to mount that together so that you can mount it on like something round. And then this is like a little grippy rubber pad that goes in here so that things don't, you know, spin around like this. It actually gives it a little bit of grip. So that's one option. Oh, this would be like a right angle changer thing, because if you put the camera in here this way, now you can mount it this way so it can rotate, I guess, or something. So that's basically like a 90-degree, you know, turn, like a yaw maneuver, 90 degrees. We got two base plates that with the sticky on the bottoms. One has a threading for a tripod. One does not have the threading for the tripod. And then it has this little guy that would clip in like such, and then you're locked in, and then you would unclip as such to take it out. Here we have, looks like a mount to use it without being in the case here. So let's see if I can figure this out. Does it open like mine does this way? No, does it open this way? Yeah, it's gotta open this way. There it goes. Okay. So open this up, we'll take the camera out. And this probably goes into like one of these deals, like so. Yeah, there you go. That clips into there, so you're not using it with the housing. And then you can put this on here. And now without the housing on it, you still have your GoPro connector if that's the way you want to mount it. Otherwise, you can just take this off and use a normal tripod connection to it. So that's kind of cool. They give you a lot of more, there's actually a lot more options in here than I thought there was going to be as far as mounting and using it goes. There also appears to be some sort of a strap here. Not really sure how that works into anything. I don't know, I might have to read the directions on this guy because I don't really know how you would strap this to anything. But they're here. You have your little cord for charging, and then the little mini tripod, which is actually kind of cute. It does have where you can have a removable quick disconnect. You should put this on the camera, and then this clips into here so you can have your tripod and take it on and off without having to try to unscrew it every single time. So that's a pretty cool thing too. Let's look at this case here. The case looks completely waterproof. Obviously, that's how it's designed to be. It does have little sponges in here to hold the camera securely and snugly. And there does appear to be 4 buttons that interact with 4 buttons on the outside. A spot for the SD card, charging, and your screen. Okay. So overall, I mean, everything seems pretty cool. The fit and the finish, I'm pretty happy with. A lot of these action cameras will give you a bunch of stuff to attach it for your action, but you know, for the price, there's a decent amount of stuff in here. All right, so let's go over a couple things and let's look at like size, weight, and all that kind of stuff, because I know some of you will be interested in that. So let's just make a little room here. All right, so first let's compare the 2 cameras that, you know, in their waterproof housings. We have the GoPro Hero, the original, and we have the ExploreOne in its waterproof case. The GoPro Hero comes in at a whopping 111. The ExploreOne comes in at 120. So basically it's 10 grams heavier, which is not really that big of a deal when it comes to these 2 cameras. For comparison also, let's look at the Session, which is at a measly 74 grams. So obviously if weight is a concern, then you're going to want to use a Session. But as far as these are concerned, for 10 extra grams, it's not that big of a deal. Now, the one difference is this one does come out of the case. I cannot do that with my Hero, but let's compare without a case. Without a case, it's 51 grams. So if you want to fly this around and not use this whole big waterproof case on your drone, which I don't know why you would, since you don't really need it waterproof, although it would provide like lens protection and crash protection type of thing, sort of like putting body armor on your GoPro. But just by itself, it weighs 51 grams, so it's actually even lighter than the Session, which is at 75 grams. So it is lighter than a Session. So I'm not going to pull out calipers to get the actual measurements, but you can see in size-wise, they're almost about the same width, but it's about maybe 1.5 times longer. Yeah, about 1.5 times longer. And as far as thickness goes, you know, if you want to count the lens, it's almost the same thickness, maybe, you know, a couple millimeters longer as far as thickness goes. And then obviously with my Hero that I can't come out of the case, that's obviously bigger because it has a whole case on it that's waterproof. But you can see the comparisons here. Take from that what you will. So I will say, as far as holding it in my hand, I mean, I've obviously never held a GoPro, you know, Hero that does not come out of the case. So I don't know whether this feels cheap or not. But I mean, it does feel pretty solid. It does have a little bit of weight to it. So it does feel, you know, the weight's probably coming from the battery that's in it and all. But it does have a really good feel in the hand. What it really boils down to, though, is just comparing these guys. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to set this up. I'm going to put the memory card in here. I'm going to plug it in, charge it up. read the manual a little bit just to see how this thing works, how the functions work, how to set it up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to come up with some sort of like a rig where I can put like all of these cameras like side by side filming all at the same time. And we'll go out and we'll go film some stuff and see how it compares to the other two cameras. All right, let's go do that. While it's charging, I actually just ran and put it on the charger. I had some time to play with these connections and these doodads that it came with, and I had some discoveries, so I figured I'd share those with you. First off, these straps. What these straps are for, you see how I have this set up? You can take one of these mounting plates and you could, strap, instead, if you don't want to glue it with the sticky to a helmet or something, you have these two belts that kind of work like a battery strap almost, where it's got a little buckle, you open it up and you can snug it down or loosen it up wherever you need it to be. And then you can tighten it down and you can, go through like loops of something to mount this onto something using some straps. It also comes with two little Velcro versions that are a little bit smaller. So if these are too big for you and maybe these Velcro little strips work better for you, you can use those as well. The next thing I found that I thought was kind of unusual is there's no way out of what they give you to mount it to the tripod if you want to use the underwater housing. What I mean is that this has a normal tripod screw. This has the GoPro, plastic blades. You can't connect these two. The only way I can figure out to do it is that you have to take the mounting plate that has the threaded part, put that onto the tripod, like so, and then on the waterproof housing, you have to put the clip part, and then you have to clip this onto here like that, and that's how you would get your waterproof housing onto the tripod. But to go through this step here to have this mounting plate involved seems a little unusual, since they have this piece that can convert from threads to GoPro. You'd think they would have included a little version of this that was like, the reverse. Like if this piece here that I just mounted on just had the thread right on it, instead of having to have like a quick disconnect on top of, because remember this has a quick disconnect. So then it's like I have a quick disconnect here, and then I have this quick disconnect here. It's like, I don't know. It seems a little clunky for the connection to the tripod if you wanted to use the underwater housing. The other thing I would like to point out is I've already broke my housing. And I don't fault it to be the quality of the thing. I fault it to be me forcing things. And I'll show you what I mean, what happened to compare. So I'm used to my GoPro. There's no locking mechanism. This thing is rock solid, and it's kind of hard to get your finger on there and get it popped. But once you get it popped, it'll open up, and there's your access to your memory card and your charging port. But there's no latch or switch or anything. This one has this little switch that I completely didn't see. And that little switch is what's supposed to be, you pull the switch over and then you can release it nice and easily. Now, if you watched earlier, I'm like struggling and it's like boom, and it cracks open. Well, what I really did is I ended up breaking the little latch that holds it. And the reason why they did that is I can understand if I was taking this on a scuba dive and you just barely bump like this section, it'll pop open. And if you're underwater and this pops open, your camera's toasted. So that latching is to keep this part down, because it takes very, very little. Like, I mean, I'm barely pushing with my finger and it'll pop it open. And once it's open, you're done. So if you buy this, use the latch. I broke mine, so you don't have to break yours. So that's, whatever. It is what it is. All right, so before we get into the nitty gritty of everything and do some outdoor tests, I just wanted you to see the rig that I'm going to be using. So what we have on this rig, we have a GoPro Session Hero 4, I think this is. We have a GoPro Hero, that's the original one that you can't take out of the waterproof case. Here we have the ExploreOne, and when I go outside, I will be testing it both with the non-waterproof as well as the waterproof case. And then for good measure, I have my iPhone X down here that I'll be recording with also, to give you a little bit of what it looks like in all accounts. So what I'm going to do now is actually I'm going to give you a little bit of outdoors and test it in a, you know, kind of a golden hour, sun low on the horizon, and we'll be doing some like darks to brights. We'll be doing some, you know, rolling shutter looking and all kinds of stuff. All right, so now we're going to do an audio test. Audio test 1, 2, 3. This audio is coming from the GoPro session. GoPro session 1, 2, 3. This audio is coming from the GoPro Hero. GoPro Hero 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. This audio is coming from the ExploreOne. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. This audio is coming from the iPhone. iPhone testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. The ExploreOne has the scuba waterproof case on, so I will swap it out for the non-waterproof case for audio test. All right, this is an audio test of the ExploreOne without a waterproof housing. The ExploreOne without waterproof housing. This is a test of the GoPro Hero. This is a test of the Session. And this is a test of the iPhone. Also, one thing I'm noticing is in the non-waterproof housing for the ExploreOne, there's a little bit of rattle, and it's not held securely. So if you're using this without the waterproof housing, you may want to put a rubber band or something to keep it nice and secure so it doesn't rattle around. Although if it's just sitting on a tripod, the rattle shouldn't be an issue. But if you're moving it around, there would be a little bit of rattle involved. So we will do a little bit of a jog. And now just walking. That was a pretty good representation of the camera, and putting it in comparison with the other cameras that I had at my disposal, I think it turned out pretty good and the results speak for themselves. So ultimately, what's important here is your opinion, because if you're considering making this purchase, you're the one who has to be happy with your purchase. So I invite you to go back, rewind, take a look at those comparisons again, pause it, compare field of view, quality of picture, color, all that fun stuff to really get a feeling of what we're talking about here. So now that you've formed your opinion, I'll give you my opinion, because I've spent some time, looking through this, looking at the videos, editing it together, looking at how the different pictures compare. Here are my thoughts. First off, let's talk about the hardware itself, not even the picture quality, but just comparing the hardware. And the one thing I was not so thrilled with was the non-waterproof housing on the camera. It rattled, it made a ton of noise. It rattled so much even that when I was on the other camera's mics, I could hear it rattling. So that gives you an idea of how loud this rattling is. It was kind of distracting even because I could hear it as I'm holding it and walking around. So obviously that would need like a rubber band or something along those lines to snug it up and to tighten it, which is not a big deal. As far as using this, like let's say on a quad and stuff, you're not going to have that issue because you're not going to put it in that tripod mount. You're just going to strap it with some sort of 3D printed part or something along those lines. However, me personally, I would recommend, if you can spare the extra weight, putting it in that waterproof case, just because of a couple factors. One, it'll cut down that wind and prop noise, unless that's what you're looking for. But typically, if you're going to be filming, flights, you're going to put it to music or something along those lines. So it kind of tones that all back and makes it a little more muted. Also, it adds a little bit extra protection, because if you have a crash, you don't have to worry about your lens breaking, or you don't have to worry about your screen breaking. These are things that it would potentially protect against. Would it survive a crash without being in that housing? Well, I'm not really sure. I mean, it depends on the severity of the crash and what happened. I think it could probably stand up to maybe 1 or 2 crashes, but I don't think it would withstand anything major. I wouldn't say it has a rugged feel to it, but it doesn't feel fragile either. Although having a screen on the back, I'm sure it's not meant to be banged around. So personally, if I was putting this on a quad, I would probably rig up some sort of GoPro holder instead of, just putting it directly on. Although the price is so cheap comparatively that I don't think you need to be as careful with it as you would something that's much more expensive. So now let's talk about picture quality. And the thing that immediately jumped out at me was that it has some sort of weird compression going on in the camera. What I mean by that is there are certain frames that are usually where there's a gradient of tones that it becomes very blocky. It does not look high definition at all. And it's not that the camera's not capturing it, it's just that whatever compression that they're doing from the sensor to the SD card is making it look very blocky, very just not pleasant looking. It's not always apparent, but I can throw up a couple frames here where you can see that there's just going to be some blockiness that really shouldn't be there and the other cameras don't have. The other thing was the field of view. So when you're looking at field of view, what does that mean? Well, it really means how far zoomed in or how far zoomed out or how wide angle the camera is. And the indication of that is really taking a look at something and how big is it compared to other things. So obviously when you look at this frame, for example, you can see that the iPhone has the narrowest field of view because the building in the background there looks the largest, with the ExploreOne being second. So you can see it's not as wide angle as the GoPro counterparts, but it is a little more wide angle than, let's say, my iPhone X. So this could be a good thing or a bad thing. Usually when you're flying on a quad, you want it a little bit more wide angle, because the wider the angle, it'll almost give the feeling of flying faster because of the wide angleness of it. And usually people who are putting GoPros on their quads like that sort of feel, and that's what they're looking for. Now, as far as colors go, I found them to be maybe a little bit oversaturated. I don't know. I felt like the two GoPros have more of a, duller color tone to them, which is fine because when you go into, post-processing, you can boost those colors up, do whatever you want to do with them. But, comparing apples to apples, because everything was just straight out of the camera. I did not apply any color grading. I did not apply any, audio enhancements or anything. That's basically straight raw footage that I'm showing in those comparisons. And in certain instances, it's like almost just kind of blows out the colors a little bit. They're a little bit too saturated is really the only way to describe it. And as well, it had, I don't know really how to explain it, but it's sort of like when you're using a camera on too high of an ISO setting, in a darkened area and you get all that like staticky looking stuff. This did that when you were just in normal daylight outdoors. Like I felt like there was just like a lot of like static going on. So ultimately, comparing them, my own personal opinion, comparing to the other 3 cameras that we're looking at right now, it just doesn't fit in for me and for what I'm doing, because I can throw a session onto my quad and fly it around, or if I want to use a camera to do like some B-roll or some other things while I'm out at a shoot, I can use those cameras. I can also use my iPhone. It doesn't really fit in, and it doesn't overtake any of those cameras, proving itself to be any better. So therefore, for me personally, I don't really have a use for it. So I have not that I'm going to, I already have returned it back to Costco because it just did not perform what I needed it to do to at least be equal to or better than what I'm currently using. However, this comes with a big however. You have to look at the price. So for example, over here, I've done a little bit of a breakdown of how this compares price-wise to the other GoPros that you could potentially purchase right now. The second column over there is actually how many ExploreOnes could you buy for the price of the GoPro. So for example, you can get an ExploreOne for the price of an ExploreOne. That obviously should make some sense. But let's look at, let's say, a session. Now, my session is a Hero 4. It's rather old. I couldn't find anywhere reliably to purchase it, but they have the Hero 5 sessions. And you can get about 5 of these ExploreOnes for the price of buying 1 of those sessions. So now, is a session about 5 times better than this product? Because one thing I like to do when I'm making a comparison of 2 very vastly different priced items is you have to think to yourself, well, is this item, however many times more valuable it is, better than this item? And I would say yes, the session is about 5 times better than this item. So if I had to pick between the 2, I probably would still opt for the session versus buying this camera, for the simple fact of there's already mounts that exist for the session. It's sort of like the status quo normal thing that you see on quads, and it's pretty rugged and pretty durable. When I fly mine, I've had many crashes and, you know, thankfully haven't had any damage as of yet. Keep in mind, though, that is a renewed session. It's another fancy way of saying it's a refurbished session. It's not brand new in the box. It's basically a used item that has been renewed, refreshed, refurbished, whatever needed to be done. So you're not getting a brand new item. Same thing when we move to a Hero 6 Black. Now, we're looking at about 6 times the price of one of these ExploreOnes. Now, which one would I pick out of these 2? If I had the money to spare, I probably would go for the Hero Black, the Hero 6 Black. But at 6 times the price, I wouldn't think that that's like 6 times better. And I almost feel like I might want to start thinking about using the ExploreOne, especially if I was on a budget. Okay. Now, if you have the money to spend, by all means, I'm not telling you that this is better than these products. I'm saying that you're spending a lot less and getting kind of 6 times less the quality, let's say. Okay. So that makes a little bit of sense. So moving on now to the Hero 7 Black, and now we're talking brand new prices. You're talking 11 times better. This is sort of the breaking point where you start to think to yourself, well, what am I looking for and what am I going to be doing? Because if you're really just buying this to strap to a quad and fly it around, and that's all you're doing, is it 11 times worth the price? You'd have to make that decision. Personally, I would say the quality of the ExploreOne was acceptable enough to say that it's not worth 11 times the price. I can buy 11 of these cameras and break them 11 times and go through 11 whole, fresh, brand new setups to pay for that Hero 7 Black. That sort of puts it into a perspective of like, yeah, the quality's not so great, but I also only paid about $30. Now for the Hero 8 Black, I mean, it's not even a question. We're just under 14 times the price. So 14 of these ExploreOnes versus one Hero 8. Personally, if it was me, I would be petrified taking a Hero 8 brand new and strapping it to my quad and flying. Maybe I'm not such a great pilot. Maybe I'm just a little bit more protective of my purchases and things I spend money on. But it just seems like that's a lot of money to be flying around up in the air with the potential of crashing. So I think that, that money would be better spent elsewhere, or make sure you have some sort of protection plan or something on there that's okay to basically smash it up and have it fixed or replaced or whatever they do to it. Do I think it's a great camera? Not really. But do I think it's a $30 worth of camera? Absolutely. It's worth every penny of the $30 that it costs to buy it. Just don't expect GoPro results. So if you're just getting started and you don't have much money, because you know what? You probably just spent a whole boatload of money on the quad and the transmitter and the goggles and all that stuff. You don't need super duper awesome GoPros on your quad too. You could get a $30 camera, slap it on there, and at least this way you have a way to go back, look at your footage, show your friends, show your neighbors, show your dog and cat. At least review your footage, review your tricks, learn from them. Part of it, when I film, is not only just to show or share, but it's also to review and watch, to learn from, okay, that worked, that didn't, that looked cool, that looked stupid. And if that's what you're using it for, then a $30 camera would still get you by, no problem. Like I said, the only question would be the durability of it, because I haven't tested it in a crash. And personally, I've returned mine because it doesn't fit in with what I need. So I didn't want to smash one up. I just felt that was a little wasteful. If you know anything about me, it's all about getting value, and I didn't want to be wasteful with something. So I just returned it, and it's back at Costco. I just provide the information for you. I show the different samples of the video and the audio qualities, and it's really up to you to make your decisions in what works for what you want to do and what projects you're looking to do this on. So hope I got you some good information there. If you haven't already, hit that like icon, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon, hit all that stuff. And if you hit that dislike button, just comment down below. Let me know, why didn't you like it? Because that helps me produce better videos. All right, so as always, my name's Tronage. Fly strong.